projects at the Willie Brown Institute. And we are very proud and happy to be a sponsor at the NAACP Gala. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Abin Hill with Wells Fargo. So on behalf of the 9,000 team members here in San Francisco, we want to say thank you for your support and another 50,000 years of support for our community. Thank you.
I'm Dr. Harry Edwards. I'm with the San Francisco 49ers. And, it's an honor to be here representing Jed York, Dr. John York, Denise DeBartolo York, and the San Francisco 49ers organization. They're strong supporters of the NAACP. They believe emphatically in the mission of the NAACP and look forward to working with you over the years, even though we may be housed in Santa Clara. We left our heart in San Francisco. Thank you very much.
Look where the mic was for him. Whoa. Well, we're just a few minutes away from our guest speaker, Mr. Tavis Smiley, and only 30 minutes away from the fabulous music of Pete Escovedo and his orchestra. But first, we have a presentation to the branch, and we ask that Dr. Annette Shelton come back to the microphone to make that presentation. Okay, we're going to pass on that, so now we're turning it over to Dr. Brown.
Ladies and gentlemen, to our misters of ceremonies, members of the dais, to all the members of the executive committee of the San Francisco branch of the NAACP, Reverend clergy, educators, political servants, representatives of community-based organizations, to our honorees, to all of you on the sound of my voice. Words fall far too short for me to express how privileged we are to have the gentleman whom I will present to you as our featured guest speaker. Let there be no mistake about it. There were some of you, and I say some of you in our general public, who raised the question, dared to ask me, why would you have Tavis Smiley to speak for the NAACP banquet? And given that both of us come from Mississippi, we know how to take care of ourselves, considering all the hell we went through down there. And indeed, we have been given a brain to think for ourselves. Benjamin Elijah Mays, my mentor and friend, once said, if you can't think for yourself, someone else will do your thinking for you. And whoever does your thinking for you will be your master and you their slave. Another great writer said, If there's no difference of opinion, it's a sure sign that somebody is not thinking. Tavis Smiley has arisen from his humble beginnings to be one of the sharpest minds of our generation. If Abraham Lincoln could evolve from a log cabin, be president of this nation, if Jesse Louis Jackson could move from the projects of Greenville, South Carolina, to be the first serious African-American contender for the presidency of the United States of America, we ought to take note of the fact that Tavis Smiley came from a trailer camp and has arisen to the status of being a respected journalist, social and political critic, a great writer, and more importantly, he's a brother who tells the truth. For he knows that that prophet of Nazareth said, "And ye shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free." I thank God that Tavis Smiley has not been intimidated by those critics who are still in a state of euphoria over the first African-American being elected president of this country. But they fail to realize that though it's not of his making, that is Mr. Obama, but the reality is today, in 2013, the unemployment rate for African Americans is over 14%. And in 1963, it was only 10.3%. Many of us have failed to think of the fact that we are living at a time when the wealth, the combined wealth for African Americans is 4 times less than that of the majority culture. My friends, I thank God for a brother who realized that, as Mary McLeod Bethune said to a group of women at the National Council of Negro Women, "Don't you privilege middle-class Negroes who are talking about you are the first this and the first that in government, in medicine, in science. I want you to make sure," she said, "that you are not the last Negro in your position." Tavis Smiley has spoken the truth, and he loves our president as I love him and have supported him. But God knows, if the truth be told, we got to be like Jesus of Nazareth, who was concerned about the poor, the least of those, and that's what he stands on. And I present to you a brother who's concerned about the underdog, the locked out, the leftover, the looked around, and those who are marginalized in this society. I give unto you the man who speaks his mind, Tavis Smiley, my brother from Mississippi, who will tell it like it is tonight. Give it up for him as he comes to give us a word of encouragement, of hope, of clarity, of conviction, of power, and of prophetic utterances. Let us hear him.
What my friend Reverend Brown did not tell you was that the first Negro who called him to ask him, why are you asking Tavis to come to San Francisco on this august occasion to speak to a room full of black folk and others? The first Negro who called him to ask him that question was me. I said to him, you must be on a suicide mission, and you must want the room to be half full if in this moment of American history you are asking me to come to address a gathering such as this. Because it is the case, as your mentor and professor, many of you know that Reverend Brown was honored to be just a handful amongst a small group of persons who had the high honor of sitting as a student in the only class that Dr. King ever taught at his alma mater, Morehouse. Amos Brown was a student in that classroom. And I've often wondered what it must have been like to sit at Martin's feet. And I regard Dr. King, let me be clear about this, I regard him as the greatest American this country has ever produced. That's my assessment. The greatest American this country's ever produced. I said that once, Dr. Brown, in the company of my dear friend Dick Gregory, and he about slapped me in the back of my head. He said Martin was my friend, and Martin is a great American, but we went into a 5-hour debate about Martin versus John Brown. That's another conversation for another night. But if you know anything about the history of John Brown, you can understand why Dick Gregory would pick John Brown, even over his friend Martin King as the greatest American ever. But since Dick ain't here, I'm going to win this argument tonight. I regard Dr. King as the greatest American we've ever produced, and for Amos Brown to be sitting in that classroom at the feet of Martin King, I've thought about that so many, many times over the years, and so it's not just because he is my brother, not just because he's a fellow Mississippian, but I celebrate your courage. I'm going to talk about courage tonight. I celebrate your courage, I celebrate your conviction, I celebrate your commitment, I celebrate your character, and anything you ever ask of me, I hope that I'll be able to do. Anything you ever ask of me, I am there for you, because when you try in this environment, as you alluded, to speak some truth to power, it makes you unpopular. Dr. King once called it a vocation of agony. Trying to tell the truth, King said, is a vocation of agony. And I'm no Dr. King, but I know a little something about that over the last few years. It is the case that because of trying to speak the truth in this hypersensitive moment, one has been called everything but a child of God. And so I was surprised when Dr. Brown asked me to come address this gathering. But of course, I wasn't going to say no to him because I didn't want to dishonor the kind invite, but also because it's time for us to come to terms with the truth of the suffering that's being rendered invisible in our own community, even in the era of Barack Obama. It's time for us to come to terms with that. I thought of your friend, your teacher, your mentor, Dr. Brown, Benjamin Elijah Mays, who once said that I have only but a minute, only 60 seconds in it. Forced upon me, I can't refuse it, I didn't seek it, I didn't choose it. But it's up to me to use it. I must suffer if I lose it, give account if I abuse it, just a tiny little minute, but all of eternity is wrapped up in it. So the question for us tonight in the few minutes that I have is how, against all of the odds, how are we going to maximize this moment? How do we maximize the moment that we find ourselves in, where our people are suffering in ways now, even in the era of Obama, that they have never suffered before? Not because I said it, but because the data bears that out. How then do we make the most? How do we maximize the moment that we find ourselves in? Harry Edwards made reference to the song by my dear friend. I don't know how it is that I've been blessed enough to live in this era and to be on PBS every night and NPR every day, to meet so many wonderful people, but I count, after all these years, Tony Bennett, a friend of mine. I think if he were here, he'd tell you the same thing. We've hung out in this country and around the world, and nobody can lay on that song, of course, like Tony Bennett. And Harry Edwards made reference to leaving his heart, and the 49ers having left their heart in San Francisco. I come to San Francisco tonight not having left my heart here, but I come here tonight with a heavy heart. Come with a heavy heart, given the conditions that our people are wrestling with. And yet, as I walked in the room tonight with a heavy heart, Dr. Brown, because of your leadership and the team here at the San Francisco NAACP, and the wisdom and the choices that you all have made tonight to honor these great San Franciscans and to honor these great Americans, even as I have sat in this room tonight, I have been not just empowered, not just inspired, and not just moved, but I have been re-energized by the example and by the witness and by the living epistles that we have seen walk up on this stage tonight. I've been reminded, as I hope you have, that even when things have been beyond worse, beyond horrific for us, we have found a way to survive. I mean, you see these august persons, all of these honorees, certainly many of them. I'm scared to start calling names because you've been in the same room that I've been in tonight, so you've heard the backstory. You know the history. You are honored to have these persons walk amongst you every day. But when you see the sacrifice, when you see the struggle, when you see the service of an Amos Brown and of a Cecil Williams and Dr. Churchwell and all these others who've come across the stage tonight, it reminds you, I hope, and it certainly reminds me, that there is a calling on our lives, that there's a purpose on our lives, that there is a vocation, not a job, but a calling, a purpose, a vocation that each and every one of us have been given to leave the world better than we found it. And so I sat tonight just watching and listening and taking in all of this greatness. I want to be clear. I didn't say success. I said greatness. There are two different things, you realize. You can be successful without ever being great, but you'll never be great without being successful. Can I prove this to you right quick? Let me think of a quick example. Donald Trump. By the world's definition, Donald's never done anything to me, so I'm not trying to cast aspersion on him, but by the world's definition, Donald Trump is quite successful. But ain't nobody ever gonna call Donald Trump great. He is successful, but he's not great. So you can be successful without ever being great, but you'll never be great without being successful. And I find that we live in a world where everybody's chasing success. And all that really means is that they're chasing significance. But nobody's trying to be great, Dr. Brown. And Dr. King said that any of us can be great because any of us can serve. All it takes is a heart full of grace and a soul that's generated by love, so that any of us can be great in our lives. We live in a world where everybody wants to be successful. Can I take it to the next level? It's not just we want to be successful, it's that everybody and everything is up for sale. It's like we're all commodities. We're all available to the highest bidder. And so nobody lives lives anymore based on a set of immutable principles. It's whoever will put the highest price on your head, whoever will pay you the most for those principles, for those beliefs, for those values. Everything and everybody seems to be for sale. So it becomes difficult in this critical moment where we ought to be wrestling with these uncomfortable and inconvenient and unsettling truths. It becomes difficult in this moment to have a conversation about the suffering of our people because everybody's chasing success. Nobody, like the folk we saw on this stage tonight, nobody came across this stage tonight having started years ago trying to be successful. The goal was to be great. You think Harriet Tubman went back 19 times trying to be successful? Harriet Tubman was reaching for something greater. She was trying to be great in her lifetime. She didn't go back 19 times because she thought somebody was going to write a book about her or do a documentary series about her or name a building after her or put her name on a college. That's not what Harriet Tubman was all about. She went back 19 times trying to be great in her lifetime. Martin didn't put himself on the line trying to be successful. Malcolm X wasn't trying to be successful. Mary McLeod Bethune wasn't trying to be successful. And all that we seem to talk about these days with our bourgeois sensibilities is how successful we are. And that's what Dr. Brown is talking about when he's referencing the first Negro to do this and the first Negro to do that and the first Negro to do the other. And everybody wants to be successful. I didn't come here tonight to celebrate the NAACP because they've been successful over the years in this city and beyond. Indeed, they have. We wouldn't be here were it not for the witness of the NAACP, and that is why, before you ask, I am a lifetime member. And if there's anything that gives me a right to stand here tonight, it ain't because you invited me, it's because I paid my dues. I paid my dues. I'm a lifetime member of this organization, so if anybody can critique it, I can. And so I came tonight to celebrate not the success of this branch, but the greatness of the efforts in this city and beyond on our behalf by this grand organization called the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. That question still lingers and hangs in the room tonight. How do we get at the truth about the suffering in this moment when it is so impolitic, when it is so impolite to raise those uncomfortable, inconvenient, and unsettling truths? Now, if you think I've said something already, strap yourself in, because we're about to climb right quick. Tell me when you're ready. Everybody fastened in? All right. Now, this is the truth you don't want to hear. The good news is I got my plane ticket back to LA, so I'm all right. I've already checked the closest exit to me, so I know how to get out of here and I know how to get back home. But here's the truth. The truth is that when the era of Obama is over, unless you think I'm about to demonize the president and cast aspersion on him, you've missed the point already. So as my preacher says, stay with me, I'm going somewhere with this. But the truth of the matter is this. When Barack Obama is no longer our president in just a few short years, and you see how fast the time goes. So I'm saying a few short years, but it's really just going to be a few more days before he is what we call in politics a lame duck. They pushing this Hillary Clinton story front page every day. If you thought she was coordinated, or if she thought that she was coordinated the last time, and you know what happened the last time she thought she was coordinated. This Negro Barack Hussein Obama came out of nowhere and just disrupted that coronation. And I'm glad about it. I'm glad about it. But if you thought the first time around was a coronation, do you see the way that everybody and everything is already lining up in support of Hillary Clinton? And I'm not mad at it. I'm not mad. I don't knock hustle. So I'm not mad at Hillary Clinton. I'm just telling you, you see how the ducks are already starting to line up in the Democratic primary. I sometimes feel sorry for poor Joe Biden. Joe's like, what about me? I'm here. I'm the vice president. I've been a good vice president. And we just looking right past Joe Biden. He's trying to get our attention and looking right past him. And God help if you're anybody other than Joe Biden, because Hillary's just sucking all the air out the room. And we ain't got nowhere near, I said it, we ain't got nowhere near 2016. But this is the story that they keep pushing out in the Chronicle and everywhere else every day. Can't wait for the 2016 contest. So it's just a matter of time, a matter of days, before Barack Obama is ultimately going to be irrelevant anyway. So this conversation is not about Barack Obama, it's about us. It's about us. It's about the NAACP. It's about all these organizations and all of us as individuals and what we are going to do to maximize this brief moment that Mays suggested that we have. It's just a moment, 60 seconds. You didn't choose it, but it's up to you to use it. You're going to suffer if you abuse it. Just a tiny little minute, but all of eternity for us is wrapped up in it. What are we going to do with the moment that we have to turn the tide against what's threatening to take us under? How do we make the most of this moment? Now here's the reality. When the era of Barack Obama is over, the data already indicates, let me back up and give a quick preface here. The data indicates that if you happen to be atheistic or agnostic, then something miraculous is going to have to happen. And if you're a believer, as I am, then it's going to take a move of God. But the data already indicates that when the era of Obama is over, black people, his most loyal and steadfast constituency, will have lost ground in every single leading economic indicator category. Not because I said it, check your facts. Go to the Pew, you want some sites? Go to the Pew Research Center. Go to the Annie E. Casey Foundation. Go to Austin Goolsbee. In a conversation with me on my NPR show just a few weeks ago. Austin Goolsbee, as you recall, was the head of the President's Council of Economic Advisors. This is the President's numbers man, who is now back at the University of Chicago. And he's in Chicago now studying this, University of Chicago, scratching his head, trying to figure out what this means. That in the era of the first African-American president, black people lost ground in every single leading economic category. Are you still with me? Let me go forward, then I'm going to come back. Imagine, if you will, 25, 50, 75 years from now, the quagmire that the historians are going to find themselves in. The historians are going to ask themselves first, how is it that at the very moment that these Negroes were celebrating the first African-American president of the United States, how is it at that very moment the bottom fell out for black America? How is it? Now that is the question. They're going to be wrestling with this. How is it? So I'm not looking at 2016 or Hillary, whoever it's going to be. I'm already past that. I'm down the road trying to figure out what the historians